नमस्कार, यो अन्तर्वार्ता अनि म हुँ अरुण देव जोशी। अन्तर्वार्तामा हामी विभिन्न व्यक्तित्वहरू ल्याएर तपाईहरु समक्ष कुराकानी गर्छौं, उहाँहरूको अन्तर्वार्ता गर्छौं। आज अन्तर्वार्तामा हामीसँग एकजना विदेशी पाहुना हुनुहुन्छ जो लामो समय नेपाली राजनीतिलाई प्रभाव पार्ने या पारिरहेको भनिएको ठाउँमा रहेर काम गर्नुभयो र उहाँले आफ्नो नेपाल बसाई र नेपालका विभिन्न राजनीतिक सम्बन्ध, राजनीतिक उहाँले नियालेको राजनीतिका विषयमा उहाँले एउटा भर्खरै किताब निकाल्नु भएको छ। काठमाडौँ डाइलेमा रिसेटिङ इन्डिया नेपाल टाइज भन्ने किताब, जुन अहिले पछिल्लो समय निकै चर्चित भएको छ। आज हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ नेपालका लागि पूर्व भारतीय राजदूत रञ्जित राय। Ranjit Rae, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Namaskar.
You wrote it from your experience in Nepal.
Yes, that is correct. I've been dealing with Nepal for almost 2 decades, and I have a passionate interest in the India-Nepal relationship. And of course, it's a very complex relationship because it's such a close relationship. So I really wanted to explain to the general public in India and in Nepal about this relationship so that people are better informed. And we are neighboring countries, so we must know much more about each other than we do. So that was the purpose of writing the book.
Very few Indian ambassadors who have been in Nepal have written the book entirely based on Nepal. Few have written their memoir and Indian memoir, they have reference of the Nepal as well. But you have written the book exclusively in Nepal. There are very few, I think, Sriman Narayan, Dev Mukherjee, they have written books on Nepal. What prompted you to write a book in Nepal, only in Nepal?
Well, partly because of my experience. I've been dealing with your beautiful country for many, many years. And over the years, I've interacted with a lot of people. I have dealt with many issues. And I wanted to communicate this to the general public so that I think there needs to be more openness, more transparency, more understanding. So which is why I wanted to write this book and also to explain both the positive sides of the relationship as well as the small issues that come up from time to time and that need to be resolved. So I wanted to give a comprehensive picture about all the dimensions of the India-Nepal relationship.
And you were there as an ambassador of India in Nepal in a very critical time, like it was a post-insurgency, Nepal, and it was a time of making of the constitution. First constitution assembly had failed, the second constitution assembly had been established, and the earthquake was there, blockade was there. Like you could have imagined, you could have a nightmare of something, like a nightmare-like thing. You couldn't have even such kind of thing. What was the experience? How hard it was in those difficult periods that Nepal witnessed? You have been an ambassador to Nepal.
There have always been difficult periods. Both in Nepal. You look at the history, contemporary history of Nepal. There was the People's War or the Maoist insurgency. Then there were the agitations in the Tarai Madhes region. So Nepal has gone through a lot of changes and transformations and transitions. And I had the privilege of being in Nepal at a time when very major changes were taking place. So certainly it was very challenging, but I think it makes life so much more interesting. And difficulties come, but then difficulties also get resolved and they go. And that is the nature of the India-Nepal relationship. And I really feel that whenever there are problems from time to time, these problems should be resolved and we should prevent them from becoming major irritants in the relationship. So certainly very challenging times, both when I was Joint Secretary dealing with Nepal in Delhi, there was the peace process, and of course later on. So in a sense, I've been associated from the beginning of the peace process to almost the end of the peace process. So I wanted to convey to the general public my personal opinions, my experiences of the India-Nepal relationship.
Yeah, this could be a once-in-a-life situation for the country Nepal, and even to witness this to you, so that maybe have prompted you to write the book.
That's correct, yes.
So let's go to your book. It has been quite controversial recently in Nepal. Lots of people, before it was released in Nepal, there's lots of controversies in Nepal. Like you have a reference over there the most controversial issue over there was IGP episode in your book. You have written over there, you have two instances about the IGP episode, that once a Home Minister seek your advice about the IGP, and the second time 4 of the aspirants of the IGP came to you that they're saying that we are more in, we will be good for the relationship between India and Nepal. So what was actually that? It was quite a controversial thing in the book, that the primary controversial thing that spread it over the over newspapers, and even the political leaders had their reaction about that. What was the real, what you want to convey?
Well, basically in Nepal, you always hear that India is micromanaging issues, India is interfering, is involved in many things. And, to some extent, it's true, India has been associated with many of the major political changes in Nepal from the time of the, Delhi Pact of 1950, through the peace process, to the resolution of the Madhesi agitations. But I did want to, correct this perspective that it's not that India is micromanaging all the time. On many occasions, since we are such close and friendly countries and neighbors, this is a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. And, that is what, I wanted to illustrate that through these two incidents in the book.
So you want to say that India is not micromanaging the things to run through this instance. They came themselves to you. But what do you think it prompted? They came themselves to you and they think an Indian ambassador can make them an IGP. It's not a minister, not a prime minister, it's a big thing. But just an IGP wanted to come to you as an Indian ambassador.
Well, this psychology, this is part of the psychology of the relationship, and this is really something that I think you have to ask our Nepali colleagues. It's very difficult for me to speak on their behalf. But I would like to say, this has been quite controversial, and I think some social media reports seem, were perhaps incorrect because they had not read the...
Even the translation was not correct.
That's right. And so this created an unnecessary controversy. But I would like to say that I stand by what I have written in the book.
So some people, even the politicians, have said that you wanted to hamper their career. Deliberately you doing that.
I don't think, we work in a certain context and a framework. So India's, what are India's objectives in Nepal? So India would like to see Nepal as a stable, peaceful, prosperous country. Because if Nepal is disturbed, then India will have also the implications, not only Nepal. So I think that's a fundamental objective. And it's within this framework that we develop our policy vis-a-vis Nepal. And, it's a comprehensive policy. It's not an ad hoc policy, I don't like so-and-so, I like so-and-so. That's not the way we work. You work on the basis of certain strategic objectives, and I think those are in the best interest of both countries. And you develop a policy framework in accordance with that. So to say that, you are sort of playing one against the other, you like one person, I don't think that's the way we operate.
Actually, it is that Indian ambassador, they are most active over here in any of the situation among the foreign ambassadors. Recently, Chinese ambassadors also have been more active in this new Chinese ambassador, but more often, Indian ambassadors are more active. Anything happens in the country, and if any country goes any situation, they go meet the Nepalese leaders. Nepalese leaders do come to them sometimes. It is quite controversial thing, and when you meet with Nepalese leader and Nepalese meet with you, there are no other persons most of the time. And you have mentioned in your book also, Narayan Kazi when the foreign minister, he has insisted that there should be some person from foreign embassy, Nepalese foreign embassy, while you are meeting the people. So why is this more Indian embassy more active, and why they are in one-to-one talk more often?
Well, this is, I think, you have to understand the psychology of the relationship, the asymmetry of the relationship. And, obviously, as I said, the relationship between Nepal and India is very, very close. I don't think Nepal has this kind of relationship with any other country in the world. So it is a very close relationship, and naturally, if the relationship is close, there'll be a lot of engagement. And I think the Indian ambassador by definition has to be active in Nepal, because we have major interests, just like your ambassador in India has to be active, because there are so many issues that have to be pursued. So I'm all for strengthening this engagement. I believe there needs to be more engagement, more cooperation, more programs, not less. So that is my thinking. In fact, I've said in the book that we have to engage with the young people in Nepal and in India, because there is a growing distance. Political leaders, young political leaders, don't know too much about each other in each other's countries. So I'm, given our interests, Nepal's interest in India, India's interest in Nepal, I think we have to really strengthen this engagement.
Why is it more often the one-to-one type of talkings like that you mentioned over there? So there are no any presence of foreign ministry over there. Like if it's a diplomatic relation, it's a two-country relation. So there's foreign ministry should be knowing what's happening, right?
Yeah, that's a very sort of academic way of looking at matters, I personally feel. Because, when you have formal meetings, of course, you have, a lot of discussions, and you have note takers and so on. But historically and, globally also, you see there are many important meetings, that we call as tete-a-tetes. Basically, even between leaders, you have one-to-one meetings. So I don't think anything exceptional in this. And the reason is that not everything is formally stated. There could be informal exchanges, or, there could be, informal sort of request for, advice or views. So not everything in diplomacy has to be in the public domain, I think, because if you do that, then I think it will really hamper the quality of the engagement that you have between two countries. I mean, tomorrow you might say, why don't you have the press in these meetings? So that it's not only the foreign ministry that needs to know, but the people also should know what's going on. So have the press in every meeting. But that's not the way diplomacy is conducted, because there's some sensitive issues, some issues that have to be outside the public domain, say whether it is intelligence cooperation or security related issues. So I don't think there's anything exceptional about this.
But more often when you are meeting the leaders, opposition leaders and party leaders, is this the same kind of situation happen like the IGP episode? They are seeking something, they are asking something, they are some kind of favor they are asking from you, and they want hands over them so they can...
I don't think so. I think everybody is involved in strengthening bilateral cooperation and engagement between the two countries in different ways. So I specific instances, I don't think there's, any sense of getting into. But given the nature of the relationship, I think this is natural, and there is nothing, exceptional, about this.
And from the book, normally people in Nepal used to think that India protected Maoist, and you have also mentioned in the book that general conception of Nepali people and Nepali other, even some leaders also, that India is Maoist, India protected Maoist, India made Maoist people. But in the book, you have mentioned that from the Indian point of view, the prevailing view of the government of India was that the Maoists needed to be degraded and destroyed, right? As they were believed to have established link with such groups in India. So it is quite a contradictory situation, like Nepal has thought of Maoists, like most of the, we also see most of the Maoist leaders were living in India during the insurgency. So it is a quite contradictory type of thing. So what actually is that?
So this is what I wanted to explain to the Nepali people. If you remember, after King Mahendra abolished multi-party democracy, and many leaders of the Nepali Congress and other parties went into exile in India, they were referred to as Indian agents, Bharatiya Dalal. And since they were in India, the feeling here was India is supporting these anti-national elements of Nepal. And so this whole anti-Indian nationalism was developed in Nepal. In the Maoist insurgency, exactly the same thing happened, that, India has created these Maoists. India wants to keep Nepal in a disturbed state. Whereas we were also grappling with our own Maoists and, insurgent elements in India. And our Prime Minister at the time, Dr. Manmohan Singh, that said this is the biggest security threat facing India. Same thing during the Madhesi agitations, that these Madhesi armed groups are supported by India, that this agitation is... So, this has been the tendency in Nepal, and I can understand that you sort of divert attention to some external factor, which you say is responsible for all the problems in the country. And, this happens in many countries. In India, you remember in the days of Mrs. Indira Gandhi, everything was a foreign hand. There is a foreign hand behind everything. So, same thing here in Nepal. So, I did want to explain to the people of Nepal what the true picture is and, what the reality was. And I also wanted to explain how India's policy evolved from a time when our view was that the Maoists should be degraded and destroyed, how our view changed depending on the developments in Nepal. And ultimately, we came to the conclusion that the only way to resolve this insurgency and stop the violence was through some sort of a political dialogue and settlement.
So, when they say that India has a direct hand in comprehensive peace agreement, is this right?
Not at all. No.
Somewhere, even Pranab Mukherjee has mentioned once in an Al Jazeera interview, and then later on he has also written, I think, in his book, that India was instrumental to 12-point agreement.
Well, I haven't seen the Al Jazeera interview, but I think the whole peace process was owned, it was driven by Nepalese actors, Nepalese political parties and the Nepalese Maoists. I don't think India had any direct role, but India was, I think, extending behind the scenes support for this. And of course, this process happened in Delhi, the final agreement in November of 2005. The 12-point agreement was signed in Delhi. So certainly, I think this had the support of the Indian establishment, but I think it was owned by the Nepalese actors themselves. And they decided, what kind of agreement they wanted.
At the time, you were looking after Nepal affairs as Joint Secretary in MEA.
Yes.
What actually, you said that your support was behind support, you are supporting. And what any proper situation, proper condition, what India has to influence Nepali leaders, you have to agree in the peace agreement. And it's kind of such a situation you would have.
So look at the context of the time. You see, in 2005 February, King Gyanendra took over executive power and there was no parliament. And our whole policy up to that period had been, supporting the twin pillar theory of constitutional monarchy and political multi-party democracy. And our view was that in order to combat the Maoist insurgency, the palace and the political parties, the democratic forces, must work together. But obviously, this view was not accepted by the then king because, he abolished multi-party democracy in February 2005. And I think this then, led to a series of developments which brought the Maoists and the political parties closer together. And our thinking at that time was that our assessment was that there is no way that the Maoists can defeat the establishment in Nepal or the Royal Nepalese Army, as it was then called, militarily. And also that, while that there was a military stalemate, neither side could really, crush the other. And it was
Indian assessment that there's a military stalemate?
That's right.
Like Nepal government and Nepal army didn't want it to accept that?
Well, I don't think so because, the other complicating factor in this was that the king abolished multi-party democracy. So the political parties then turned against the king. And the feeling that the political parties had was that perhaps, the king feels he can deal with both these elements, directly by himself with the support of the army. But that's not the way it happened. And we had all along been saying that there is a balance between multi-party democracy and constitutional monarchy, and both are important pillars and must support and reinforce each other. But this policy obviously was rejected by the king, and that's when this whole peace process started. But as far as the Maoists were concerned, I think they had to, they came into the peace process. Why? Because if they felt they could militarily take over, then they would have continued the insurgency and the conflict. They came into the peace process, which means that they also felt militarily they could not achieve their objectives, and hence there had to be some political settlement. So I think, this was the context in which this whole peace process developed and succeeded, I think. And you can see the transition of Nepal from that period up to the present date.
And you have talked about that time India's conception that they wanted to destroy Maoists, and you have given reference about the arrest of Mohan by the C.P. Gujral and then even Yadavji also. So, but when there was Matrika Yadav and Upendra Yadav, all were there arrested, and they were saying that Prachanda was also nearby them there. Prachanda was just meeting them little while earlier, and he was not arrested. And it was said that India don't wanted arrest Prachanda, but just so they wanted to.
So this again, this is a sentiment I can understand in Nepal. So you try to create these perceptions that somebody else is creating trouble for you, which is not true at all. Of course, after 2005, the situation changed. Then we were supportive of this dialogue between the parties and the Maoists, and this happened because of the king's actions. Prior to that, we were totally against the Maoist insurgency. And India's policy evolved over a period of time. It did not happen in a vacuum. India's policy evolved because of actions that, were happening in Nepal at the time. So, you have to look at this whole process. And what you said that India didn't, arrest Prachanda is the same mindset. That see, India is creating problems for us. They are actually supporting the Maoists.
But you were knowing that India were knowing that what is Prachanda, you are knowing that?
No, how would you say? Because up to 2005 February, we were arresting people, and we arrested the tallest leaders of the Maoist movement, such as Kiran and C.P. Gujral. They were very senior leaders. So where we had good intelligence, our agencies went after them. It is only after February 2005 that the approach changed. Up to that period, and even after 2005, we constantly kept saying, talking about the balance between constitutional monarchy and multi-party democracy, even after 2005.
Yeah, then even the Maoists formed the Composha with their...
That was before, yeah.
That was before. So obviously, you may have thought, India may have thought that this, they have Indian Maoist and Nepali Maoist having relation.
That was a very...
Do you have some real evidence that they had the relation? Did you find the relation?
So the sense...
It was assumption.
No, so I think this was a fear that the Nepalese Maoists and the Indian Maoists could link up, and if the Nepalese control the Nepalese, if the Nepalese Maoists control the Nepalese state, it will become a safe haven for these terrorist elements from India in Nepal. And this was obviously a big fear because, remember in Sri Lanka, you had the LTT problem, and, you had in central India, the Indian Maoists. So those were the days when there was this feeling that a whole red corridor would develop, through the length of India and create a lot of problems. And then Composa and so on. So clearly there was, worry about this, and, the strong view was that, we must tackle these challenges.
And about the Nepal's, Nepal people, why they are afraid or why they were reluctant to India, they have some references like it's not in your book, but in Pranab Mukherjee's book, there is a reference like during the time of Nehruji, the king of Nepal, then king of Nepal, Tribhuvan wanted Nepal to be a state of India, and Nehru didn't want it. If Indira Gandhi had been there, Nepal would have been in the fate of Sikkim. So,
you see, this is, I think, the mentality, and the psychology of the relationship, as I said. Because... So it's in
the book,
so this is a small country, large country syndrome. I don't really know. I don't know whether President Pranab Mukherjee gave any evidence for this, but I have not found any evidence. Though there is this, perception in sort of...
even like in perception, I think.
But I have not seen, I've been dealing with Nepal for 20 years. I have not really found any evidence to this effect. So I can't comment on it. But I can understand this fear of Nepal. And because I've said also in my book.
So when somebody writes that kind of thing, the fear is more added more?
You have to answer that because you are Nepalese. So instead of asking me the question, you have to answer it.
You have been with the Nepalese many times. And
so I know in Nepal, I think there is, as I've said, there are all kinds of fears. There's a fear of Fijikaran, that a lot of Indians will come and settle in Nepal, change the demographic. There is a fear of Sikkimikaran, that, what happened in Sikkim may happen in Nepal. And I've said that in 2015, when Crimea was annexed by Russia, all kinds of speculation started here. There is the fear of Bhutanikaran of Nepal, so which in these days people are again talking about. So there are all these fears, and this is part of the complexity of the relationship. So we have to, be sensitive to these and, factor this into our decision making and policy making.
You have mentioned in your book you have been meeting a Nepalese leader since you have been joint secretary, and your relationship more prosper when you were here as ambassador. So what did you find about the Nepali leaders? Do they have really aspirations to make the country great, or they are only up to this gaining the power? He has been the prime minister and I will be prime minister. Please help me. I seek your support. Like that thing. What do you feel?
So whatever I have written in the book, I've written with great respect for the Nepalese leaders. And I think Nepalese leaders are strongly committed to what they see as their own national and strategic objectives of making, Nepal a strong, modern, progressive, democratic state. And the interactions we have with Nepalese leaders are basically in terms of how we can strengthen this relationship and, how we can contribute to, our regional security, our regional economic prosperity and growth. And, this is, after all, you are a multi-party democracy like India is. So different leaders may have different emphases, different perspectives, different impressions. But I think the fundamental issue, as far as from my experience, is that I think all of them are committed to strengthening and developing the relationship with India, because they realize that India is a very critical partner for Nepal.
Yeah, you have mentioned in your book you met most of the leaders when you were in joint secretary in MEA, but you didn't meet one Sushil Koirala. Sushil Koirala, you didn't meet him. You only met him after you became the ambassador. Why do you think Sushil Koirala was not there? He was not favored by India? Some Indian media even once blamed him as ISI agent.
So I don't really know, because you see what happened is after February 2005, many leaders of the second rung leaders fled to India. And so, at that time, they were not great leaders, but, they were all active.
Yeah, you have mentioned a lot of names.
So I met a lot of people. And I don't know, because the top leaders had all been arrested. Girja Babu was in jail. Sher Bahadur Deobaji was in jail. So many of the leaders were in jail. So it's the other leaders that came to India. So I don't know where Sushil Koirala ji was at that time, because I didn't have an opportunity to meet him. Though I met many leaders from the Nepali Congress, Mr. Krishan Prasad Sitola.
He was even caretaker president of the party as well at the time.
Who?
Sushil Koirala ji.
Is that so? But was he in Nepal or was he in India?
I don't know.
So I don't really know. So yeah, I have
so you didn't meet him.
But caretaker president was this Gopal Man Shrestha had come also. I remember
he was also there.
Yeah, so him wasn't he the caretaker president? Because I remember meeting him. Anyway, I can't remember this now.
Anyway, what do you feel about Sushil Koirala then? Like, you have often been meeting all the leaders and you knew what they feel, you have talked a lot. But when you meet Sushil Koirala, he was very much alien, I think, where you didn't know what he think of, what he feels about India-Nepal relationship, all these things. And many times I just say that Indian media also blamed him as ISI agent, some in Indian media. So how did you feel about Sushil Koirala when you meet him?
So I had a very good relationship with Prime Minister Sushil Koirala, both when he was not Prime Minister, he was leader of the Congress party, and after he became Prime Minister. And in fact, the two visits of Prime Minister Modi to Nepal were during Prime Minister Sushil Koirala's tenure. His visit to India for the swearing in of Prime Minister Modi in 2014 was greatly appreciated. So we had excellent relationship. And I was always struck by the simplicity of the man. He always came across as a very simple person. There were no airs. After all, he was, leader of the Congress party in Nepal. He was the Prime Minister. So one thing I was always struck was his simplicity. And I think also openness. So he, you could discuss with him, and very soft-spoken, very gentle. So I have a very high, regard for Prime Minister Sushil Koirala. It's very unfortunate that he passed away because he was, suffering, ailing from.
And it is during his time the blockade happened, and he was he said that he was not willing to talk to India about the blockade, and India is not willing to talk to him since they have not a good relationship with Sushil Koirala. And after KP Oli came in, after Sushil Koirala, the blockade is lifted. So even sometimes KP Oli is more projected as a nationalist, more nationalist leader. But lots of people say that in his time the blockade was lifted. But Sushil Koirala, at the time of Sushil Koirala, India didn't want to lift the blockade. So is it the reality?
So you're making too many assumptions. First you're assuming that India imposed the blockade. And I disagree with that. I've said so publicly. Two, you're assuming that because India had a bad relationship with Sushil Koirala, so-called blockade was not lifted, and because India had a good relationship with Prime Minister Oli. So I think this is all speculation. We have had excellent relationship with whichever government is in power, with Prime Minister Sushil Koirala, with Prime Minister KP Oli. And this is only natural, given the interests that the two countries have. You have to work with whichever government is power. Nepal has to work with whichever government is in power in India, and we have to work with whichever government is in power in Nepal. And the circumstances in which, the issues surrounding the adoption of the constitution are very well known, I think, to you. And our view was that, if politically you can resolve these issues, I think all these problems along the border, where the agitators were picketing the no man's land, etc., would be resolved. And I think this message was conveyed to Deputy Prime Minister Kamal Thapa when he visited India. And so you have to look at this whole process, and there is a progression of events in which you have to understand, what happened. And I think I've said so quite clearly in the book.
You just mentioned about the border issue as well, and you have an entire chapter in your book about the Lipu Lake Limpu episode. And you have, for us Nepalis, you have put an Indian perspective, Indian evidences over there, and like you are challenging Nepali people that go over this evidence, and India may accept that. Is that reality?
No. So what I am saying is that we are very dismayed by what Nepal has done. Nepal has done this unilaterally and without giving any evidence to us. Whatever evidence is there is only in the public domain, what some individuals have said, what some journalists have said, what is written in some articles and books. But officially nothing was communicated, to justify this decision. So we were taken aback. And I think we were very disappointed. And so this is a subject that I have dealt with in great depth. And I've studied a lot on this particular subject. And I have presented all the evidence that is available, saying that Nepal's claim is completely unjustified. And, I hope very much that the Nepalese experts and authorities would respond to what I have said in the paper. So, I think this has been an unfortunate incident in the bilateral relations. And it has certainly complicated the bilateral discussion.
You have given the reference of the Atkinson book at that time, Himalayan Gazetteer, and over there, even in that time, it was a controversy over there. Bom Saha said the river.
So if you look at the Himalayan Gazetteer, it's very clear. This issue was raised immediately after the Sugauli Treaty.
It was not officially resolved as well. That no treaty has been done.
It was resolved because the Nepalese Darbar had made a certain request for the transfer of some villages to Nepal, Gunji, Kuti and Nabi. And the East India Company had rejected this. And there is evidence of that. There is a letter from the Marquess of Hastings, who was then the Governor General. It's very clear, that evidence is very clear. So this matter was raised in 1817 and resolved in 1817. And since then has never been raised till now in 2020.
But this map issue came due to the new Indian map actually. After breaking away this Jammu and Kashmir, India released a new map, and in that map they integrated Kalapani, which was a controversial area. From you have also mentioned that that area, controversial area over there. When India cut away that area and put it in their map, which was always looked as a controversial area, and that prompted to make this bigger Nepalese map. So would you blame India to make that new map?
No, certainly not, because the new map of India, nothing about the external boundaries of India changed. Kalapani was exactly where it was shown in the new map and the old map. There was no change in the position of Kalapani. So to say that the new map of India showed Kalapani as part of India, and before that Kalapani was not shown as part of India, is totally wrong. Kalapani has always been shown as part of India since the maps that were issued in 1879. So there is absolutely no change in India's external borders in the new map that India published in November of 2019.
But then even the map that Nepal is using was made by the Survey of India. Priorly, it was mapped by the Survey of India, and even that map showed the Kalapani was in Nepal. Just they have a little thin line over there that like a controversial area.
No,
but
I don't know.
It was not like that.
I don't know. I don't think you have your facts correct. There is no map of Nepal up to 2020.
No, that tip was not there. Tip was not there.
So about Kalapani, the dispute was raised in the late 1990s. And it was agreed that Kalapani and Susta, these were the only two remaining issues on the India-Nepal border, these would be resolved at a political level. And this is, because of a dispute in terms of the source of the Kali River, whether it is Kalapani, because many streams are coming into Kalapani, or whether this Kali River begins from Lipu Lake Pass. But what Nepal has now done is, has gone further west and said, no, actually the Kali River begins from where
it was once published by the ML party when I.K. Gujral was the Prime Minister, the party led by Bamdev Gautam. Not officially it was there.
Yeah, so you have all kinds of maps, you have maps of Greater Nepal and so on, but we don't pay any cognizance to that. We pay cognizance only to the official maps published by the governments.
So you believe that the issue of this Kalapani would have to be solved by the bilateral talks?
Absolutely, yes, of course.
So in that context, you feel the Nepal have some genuine concerns about that the land of Kalapani and Susta are there?
So yes, I mean, I know the Nepalese position on that. I also know the Indian position. So there is a difference, and clearly that difference has to be resolved. But this has become very complicated because of the new map that you have published, where you are claiming many more areas.
You have mentioned about Susta also over there in the same chapter, I think, and you have said that the river stream changed the position, and that land that belonged to Nepal when the river was there in the original position, it came to India, and as it was a fertile line, both the people claim. And from the evidence you gave there, it was original river was there, and the Susta is already resolved issue, isn't it?
Not that I'm aware of.
You have said that stream after the stream no, it would have been a resolved issue if the talk had been like that. We go to the original stream.
No, there is no original stream. When the stream changes course, that means the stream goes somewhere else. So the original stream becomes history. It has disappeared. So if you say that the river is the boundary between the two countries, and then suddenly river is going like this and it starts going like that, then the boundary changes. So this is what has happened in Susta.
But isn't it that the original...
So original stream doesn't exist. It doesn't say, the agreement doesn't say that the stream as it was in 1816 is the boundary. It says the stream is the boundary.
Does it happen everywhere that when the stream changes the boundary?
Not everywhere, but these are all old historical agreements. So there are different principles. You can have a fixed boundary principle, or you can have riverine boundaries. And now, of course, you have GPS and so on. So this is a progression.
So that means you believe if the stream goes to the Indian territory and some Indian territory come to Nepal, that will belong to Nepal then?
Yeah, so I don't believe, but this is the reality. When you say that the river is the boundary between two countries, what does it mean? The river as it exists today is the boundary between the two countries. So it's a different matter that, whether this principle is valid or not. Whether it is better to have this principle or better to have a fixed boundary principle. Because if the river changes course, then territory, changes from one side to the other and creates problems. So that is a different matter. But the way the historical agreements are defined was in terms of this.
We are talking about river, that the river or water resources are the main concern of India in Nepal. Like even the Prime Minister Modi has said in the parliament also, Rochi or Beti Pahad mein nahi rehti, like the thing. So river is the main concern of Nepal, and Nepalese are more reluctant about Indian infrastructure is coming to Nepal and developing the dams and this kind of things. And there's always like the three-way boundary Nepal has with India, and Nepal has most prevailing option that it can sell the electricity to India. And they are already reluctant that India is wanting to buy electricity in Nepalese currency. And over there also, yesterday also somebody mentions, and they wanted to sell to Bangladesh or any other country in dollars. So this kind of things are there while you want to develop the water resources over here. So have you any suggestions for that?
So I think we should look at this strategically, and you can have cooperation only if both countries benefit. So the interests of both countries have to be taken into consideration. And I personally feel that we should not look at this in very narrow mindset. We should have a broad strategic outlook. I think if cooperation between Nepal and Bangladesh is strengthened, it will benefit India also. So I, have this kind of vision, and I personally feel that we should encourage stronger cooperation within our sub-region and region. And, if you look at it from Nepal's perspective, what is Nepal's natural resource? It is this flowing water. If you can harness this water for development purposes, I think Nepal's economy will develop very rapidly. Now, to harness this water, because the water is flowing from north to south, you need cooperation of a country like India or even Bangladesh. So I think we need to work together to exploit this potential for the common interest of all countries.
Yeah, we have mentioned the same thing about the China and Nepal relationship also. India shouldn't be reluctant about the Nepal's business relationship or any other relationship to India. Right?
So India, you see,
China.
Yeah, so Nepal-China relationship, you also have to see in the context of the India-China relationship. And when the India-China relationship is very sensitive and there are problems, then, China's salience in the Nepal-China relationship increases. But as I've said, that India has very strong cooperation with China. Our trade is almost $100 billion US dollars. So if Nepal has economic relations with China, it's not something that, should concern India. But what concerns India, of course, is the security dimension of the relationship. And I think on those issues, hopefully, Nepal is sensitive to India's concerns.
And in an epilogue chapter, you have mentioned that we cannot use the same template that we use to implement domestic projects. So you have mentioned it in the book. What do you wanted to say? That India is like trying to do it as a domestic project, so Nepal is not ready to do it?
So see, we have certain procedures of tendering. We have certain procedures in the manner in which...
Like sometimes Nepal feel that India is seeing Nepal like their one state.
Yeah, that's not true. I think, nobody disputes the sovereignty of Nepal, Nepal.
So from this line you want to say that sometimes India wanted to do it like that also?
No, so from this line what I'm saying is that we have certain methods of doing projects in India, and there are a lot of delays and slippages and cost overruns. So what I'm saying is when we are doing projects in foreign countries, we cannot use those methods we are using in India. We must use more efficient methods. We must give international quality of the projects for the projects that we're implementing, whether it is roads or hydropower projects. And I think a lot of progress is being made, and I think our bilateral cooperation is growing rapidly, and the implementation has also improved. And one of the things we have done is to set up a monitoring mechanism between the two governments, and they meet every few months to review all the projects. And I think this mechanism is also progressing and helping in the implementation and improving the quality of implementation of the projects.
And you have also suggested about to India, I think, like consistency in our policy and predictability. And you have you witnessed that Indian policy is not consistent and is not predictable many times?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but what I would say is that, you know, the policies also depend on the circumstances prevailing at a particular point in time. So it's important that we have a long-term vision. You know, how do we see the India-Nepal relationship, say, 10 years from now? What kind of economic cooperation do we want to see? And, you know, once we have this common vision, then we can develop strategies to achieve it. Now, from time to time, there may be impediments, you know, in achieving this strategy or implementing the strategy. So those impediments should not divert our attention from the big goal, which is, you know, enhanced economic engagement. So that is what I was trying to say, that, you know, have a long-term vision and don't allow short-term problems to impede the achievement of your long-term vision.
Can you to strengthen the relationship between India and Nepal? You have mentioned about this tourism development and like Buddhist circuit and Hindu circuit as well. So do you feel this kind of thing will good for the relationship between India and Nepal?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the people-to-people relationship is a very strong basis for the India-Nepal relationship. And I think, you know, greater engagement through tourism, religious tourism, you know, development of the Ramayana circuit, the Buddhist circuit, the, you know, pilgrimage circuits, will really strengthen the people-to-people interaction. And it will also, you know, promote economic prosperity. So I think it's very important.
You have mentioned in your book also about Buddha. Buddha was born in Nepal, was a campaign all in Nepal. Once you have to come back from your travel somewhere in New Road or something, you have to, yeah, like if you have an Indian ambassador, so maybe you are in threat over there, you feel like that, and your security feel like that, you came back. And there's always that feeling that India is not willing to accept Nepal has been a birthplace of Buddha. Lumbini in Nepal is the birthplace of Buddha. And many times when Indian leaders say that Buddha is our pride, like Jaishankar said sometimes, one time, two adobe of peace, Buddha and Gandhi was from Nepal. And when just after accepting that Buddha was born in Nepal, in parliament in Germany, Modi also said that we are from the country of Buddha. So this kind of it's actually Buddha lived. We can accept that Buddha lived many times in Gaya and other Prayagraj, all other places over there. Buddha is a common property anyway. But to accepting this thing, Buddha was born in Nepal. Is it that any issue with India or something that?
No, certainly. I think if any Indian says that Buddha was born in India, it's probably because of ignorance. You know, I don't think anybody disputes the fact.
It's sometimes said by the top leaders as well. So
yeah, so you see, we have a common Buddhist heritage. So while he was born in Nepal, in Lumbini, which is in Nepal, you know, Buddha achieved enlightenment in Bodh Gaya. He gave his first sermon in Sarnath, and you know, he attained Nirvana in Kushinagar, which are all in India. So it is a common heritage of our two countries, and I think we should be very proud of this heritage, which has resonance throughout the world. Rather than, you know, fighting about, you know, when there is no dispute. So if sometimes an Indian may say that, oh, Buddha was born in India, it's probably out of ignorance. I don't think
but sometimes they say that they are making a Tilaura fake capital of Buddha, Tilaura court over there in India. And now, just now, after in Buddha International Airport is built in Nepal, there's lots of news over there. India has built another airport.
Yeah, so this is a common heritage. It's a shared heritage because Lord Buddha was walking in this whole region constantly. So it is a shared heritage. So I don't think either side should take objection. I mean, we don't object. You know, you have said Lumbini is the fountain of Buddhism. So you know, if we say that, you know, this Buddhist heritage is from India, I don't think anyone should find exception.
Being clear about that with both India and Nepal would be a gelling point for the relationship.
There is already clarity, but if Nepalese side wants more clarity, then I'm sure we can discuss it and, you know, provide more clarity. I don't think this is an issue at all between the two countries. Nobody in India questions the fact that Buddha was born in Nepal. No one.
And you have mentioned an interesting thing over there, like cricket in your book also. Cricket is all raised in Nepal. India is well placed to help. Right? But Nepalese feel like the India is not willing to help Nepal in cricket. There are
Some of your great players like Lamichhane is in, I think, Delhi Daredevils or somewhere. No, certainly would be.
But they feel he is due to the Australian.
No, whatever.
cricketer.
But I think I personally feel that we must work together to promote. In fact, when I was ambassador here, we tried very hard and we spoke to managers.
But many a time BCCI not supporting the issue of affiliates that like Nepal. So cricket is like you can say a syndicate type of thing that just two will go there.
Yeah, so I don't really know the intricacies of cricket administration, but my view is that we must encourage Nepal to be, a strong cricketing country, and cricket can really bring our two countries together. And not only that, but if you can develop cricketing infrastructure in Nepal, for instance, you have such a beautiful country, excellent climate. In summer, our people are playing in some other countries. Why cannot they come to Nepal for training or for matches? So I think there's a huge potential in terms of cooperation in the field of cricket.
There hasn't been any such initiations. Why you
No, there was. I think in the Tribhuvan University, there is a cricket ground that had been constructed by some Indian
GTV did that
partners. And, we were encouraging development of cricket. So I think this is something that should be promoted and encouraged. And, I think
this cricket diplomacy could be a
absolutely
good thing.
Absolutely.
Like there was a cricket diplomacy between India and Pakistan sometime.
Well, India-Pakistan relationship is very different. India-Nepal relationship is very strong and very close.
No, anyway, you were seeking cricket as a
yeah, but over there as well. And especially if your focus is on promoting youth exchanges, then I think cricket is very important.
So, really, if India promotes Nepal in the cricket, as India is a big country and lots of money over there, lots of international players come to India, and is there any kind of situation you feel like Nepalese player will be, especially like Nepali people are considered to be not as a foreign citizen in India, like you have mentioned over here also. So if they are not considered as a foreign citizen, and they're at least, if they want to practice with Indian player, good player, that kind of situation, if happens, it will certainly help Nepal.
Absolutely, I fully agree with you. Yeah, absolutely, and we should create such situations where there is good training and good exchanges between Nepalese and Indian cricketers. I fully support what you are saying.
We hope this kind of gelling points would come in India-Nepal relationship. And I have been to India. I've stayed over there long. I've worked in the media over there, and I have always seen that people-to-people relationship is always good. Indian people don't feel Nepal like other country. Even Nepalese don't feel India like other country. We don't have passport also. Yeah. So you have been friend of India. You are writing about India. Your initiations will help to strengthen India-Nepal relationship.
So what I want to say is that we have a very strong relationship. See, sometimes what happens is people forget that we already have a very strong relationship. And when you have such a relationship, some problems come up. And somehow then those problems become very, big, and everybody is talking as if there's huge problems. And people are forgetting that we already have a very strong relationship. So I think we have to look at the problems in the relationship in the right context and address those problems. But I want to say to your viewers that fundamentally the India-Nepal relationship is very friendly and very strong. And this is not only because of the government to government, but because, as you said, the people to people interaction is so strong. And I think that is the fundamental basis for our relationship, and that is what drives the relationship forward. Having said that, whenever you have such a close relationship, you should not allow complacency to set in. You have to nurture the relationship. Don't take each other for granted. And the world is changing. There is young population in Nepal, in India, with new aspirations. So you have to see that in this new context, how to carry forward and strengthen the India-Nepal relationship.
Nepal may have felt like that India takes Nepal as for granted. Many of the time they said we have lots of many other issues to deal about, world issues. Nepal is just with us. Nepal is
So that is not, no, since Nepal is one of India's most important relationships, I think, we attach a lot of importance to it. And I think in no such relationship, even, any relationship between friends, you can't take each other for granted. You have to keep working to strengthen and develop the relationship. And that is why more exchanges and open exchanges, you can share with each other your concerns, the issues, so that these can be addressed and resolved.
So
and that was one of the purposes of my writing the book.
Yes, you feel that India should have a special attention to Nepal. That not in the other way, that they will feel like India is intervening.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think Nepal should also have special attention to India. How many India research centers do you have in Nepal? Very few. For Nepal, India is a very important relationship. So you must understand what is happening in Indian society, Indian economy. How is this Indian foreign policy? How will this impact on Nepal? There needs to be much more research, much more, academic work, much more exchanges. And the same thing in India. We must understand how Nepal is changing, is developing, what implications it has. So, this is very important. And I find that there's not enough research, not enough academic work.
Some Nepali ambassador to India should write their experience in India.
Absolutely. I've written from an Indian perspective. It would be interesting
to see.
I know, but Ambassador Yadunath Khanal had written a book long ago.
Yes.
So, absolutely.
But he has some reference about India. Also, he has written in a wide perspective.
Yes. So, I think absolutely. So, this will promote better understanding.
Thank you for your time in your busy schedule for this exclusive interview for TV Today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
आज हामीले कुरा गऱ्यौँ नेपालका लागि पूर्व भारतीय राजदूत रञ्जित रायसँग। उहाँको किताबमा आधारित भएर नेपाल भारतको सम्बन्धलाई कसरी अझ प्रगाढ र सुमधुर बनाउन सकिन्छ भन्ने विषयमा छलफल गऱ्यौँ। यो अन्तर्वार्ता पक्कै पनि फलदायी भयो होला। आजलाई अन्तर्वार्ता यति नै। नमस्कार।